Used to live in a landed property, and one time I heard my dad let out the most drawn out blood curdling scream I've ever heard in my life. Like full on horror movie type of scream at around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. Then I heard footsteps shuffling up the staircase really slowly. No one was awake at the time, and as my room was directly in front of the staircase, I realized with growing horror that there was something in the house, and it was headed straight for my room. I did what any terrified teen will do. I hid under my blankets. At the time, hated sleeping with the doors closed, and for some reason, I placed a full-length mirror right in front of my bed. Then I heard it stop right outside my door, and I just know if I peek out of my blankets, I'd either see it or in the mirror. I don't exactly remember what happened next, but the thing I didn't do anything else, and I think I just laid under the blanket skirt out of my wits right until the time I usually woke up. Of course, I had to ask my dad why he was screaming in the middle of the night, and he told me this. Basically, he dreamed he saw himself on a bed, and there was black shadow or something standing over him and trying to rip his freaking soul out of his body. He was screaming both out of pain and in terror, and the only reason why he was alright was because another white light, he said it felt like my late grandmother was there, trying to protect him from whatever demon this thing was. It didn't happen again, but until today, we still have no idea what that thing was. But that was the scariest thing I've experienced. I keep my doors closed at all times now. There's this belief that when someone in the family passes, their soul will linger on earth for 7 days before they move on. My grandma passed before Chinese New Year back in 2009, so my relatives and I were waiting for her to appear, especially my dad being the youngest and closest to her. On the seventh day, my dad was away, so my mom asked me to sleep in the master bedroom with her so she wouldn't be alone. My parents usually sleep with a night light which was on and music, which hadn't been turned on yet. I was lying on my dad's side of the bed and my mom went to the kitchen to smoke. I heard snoring in the room. In my head, I was like some kind of nervous because I was the only person in the room. So I said aloud, Popo, if you're here, can you wait for me to sleep before you appear because I'm scared if you are really here. Then the snoring stopped. I freaked out and covered myself with a blanket to try to sleep. That night in my dreams, I got scolded by my grandma for being scared of her. But she told me that I was the easiest person for her to reach out to and that didn't have much time before she had to go. She gave me some messages to pass to my relatives too. I woke up the next morning tearing up, but I recorded everything she said to my dad, and my dad passed the message to my relatives. This happened when I was in the army during BMT, and it was my first supernatural experience ever. It was during field camp on the first night. I had finally fallen asleep at about midnight when I heard heavy breathing in my face. It sounded like someone panting heavily, and it was really in my face. My eyes were closed and I thought it was my body, so I wanted to tell him to shut up, but when I opened my eyes, I saw my body asleep on the other side. I instantly froze with fear because there was nothing there. I just shut my eyes, hoping it wouldn't return, and eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I asked my body, and he said he slept soundly and didn't experience anything weird. Nothing happened the next night, so I brushed the experience off as my mind playing tricks on me since I was tired from training or it was just a nightmare. The night after that, we moved to a new location. We were tasked to dig our own graves, and I was the unlucky one who was placed at the far end where I had to dig next to his huge tree. That night, we had to sleep in our graves. Then the same thing happened again. That heavy breathing in my face, but this time there was no tent covering me. I was out in the open and this invisible thing was just breathing heavily in my face once again. I was scared and could only close my eyes and pray in my head that it would go away, which is eventually did. That was my ghostly experience in Tekong during my BMT days. Company line is surprisingly clean, it's just the forest area that's dirty in my opinion. I was 10 and it was at this resort in East Malaysia. We were traveling as two families and it was all jolly and fun. Until the second night, as the youngest siblings of both families, my friends and I ended up sleeping in the room opposite the kitchen. It was the only room on the first level of the bungalow. Right before sleeping on the second night, my friend and I had a squabble over a game we played, and she ended up going to sleep with her parents. I was extremely stubborn and insisted I'd be fine sleeping alone despite my parents offered to sleep with them, worst choice ever. It was around 12:30 a.m. to 1 a.m. and it started getting very cold. I was adjusting the aircon when I heard knocks on the window panes. It went from one pane to another, and every single pane was knocked twice. I froze, not knowing if it was my ears playing tricks on me, but it didn't end there. At around 2:30 a.m., I heard furniture moving in the living room, and it was loud. I stepped outside my room and saw that the dining chair were scattered all over the dining area. I put the chair back in their place and went into the living room. The moment I sat on the sofa, the TV turned on by itself, displaying nothing but black and white static. Just when I was about to reach for the remote, it turned off by itself. My tears were flowing, but I didn't dare to make a sound. I walked to my room and then I heard a sound coming from the kitchen. In the kitchen, I saw a pile of what looked like black and white static, and it turned out to be a whole lot of ants on a white cloth. I let out a small scream and the back door suddenly opened. The wind was super strong by then, and when I tried to close the door, it wouldn't budge. Like there was a force pulling it from the outside. Then it yielded and I could suddenly close it. At this point, I was like, okay, I'm going up to sleep with my parents. I did a time check and it was 5:30 a.m. as we were supposed to wake up at 6:30 a.m. for breakfast. I decided to suck it up since it was just one more hour. Another mistake. I went to the upstairs living room, which had another set of sofas, a TV, and a small coffee table. It had a small balcony too. I sat down and finally dozed off after a quiet few minutes. Then the knock came again. This time it was just three folding glass panes, but there were 3 to 5 knocks on each pane, to and fro non-stop. While I was staring at it in horror, the TV turned on again, showing the same black and white static, before turning off again. I did a time check on my watch and it was 6:15 a.m. already. I calmed myself down and went into my parents' room and acted like I was there to wake them up. This happened in 2004 at a resort which apparently had a few murders, and I only found out from Crime Watch 6 months later. Washington grew up in what he described as a religious cult, but his extended family wasn't a part of the group when he was very young. When pastors or doctors couldn't help people in his neighborhood, they would come to his grandmother's house. He would lead people through the house hand in hand to his grandmother, sitting on the back stoop, perched on a small wicker chair. People would ask his grandmother for things. Women would say their husbands were gone, for example, and ask for help getting them back, he says. His grandmother would take strands of hair from the husband's brush, put it in paper and burn into ash. Then she wrapped it in foil and chanted over it, sometimes telling the woman to put it under her bed so the husband will return in 3 days. And it really happened. When his grandmother would say she couldn't help people, they would beg Washington to ask her to reconsider. I always had thought everyone had a grandmother like mine, and then I learned later on that everyone did not, Washington said. I found out that not all the grandma are same. Not all the grandma know witchcraft.